Before we begin off the record, I need to share something important. When federal funding was cut, WKAR lost $1.6 million. Thanks to cost-saving measures and community support, we've closed much of that gap. But we still face a $500,000 shortfall, and we can't finish the job without you. Your financial support keeps programs like Off the Record freely available to everyone in Mid-Michigan. How can you help? Become a sustaining donor today. Already a sustainer? Please consider increasing your monthly contribution. Visit wkar.org/OTR to donate, or click the link in the description. Now, Off the Record.
Michigan lawmakers are on break. OTR reporters are not. We're here to talk about the latest stories in our town in this special correspondence edition of Off the Record. Coming up next.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubik.
Thank you very much. Welcome to, we are giddy this morning. Look out, folks. Welcome to Studio C for Off the Record. Data centers, big story. Why?
Well, we've moved on from battery plants.
I was going to say, this is the new battery plant.
Data centers are Chad's new battery plant.
So battery plants didn't really work, or they just are kind of stalled in many regards. And so now we're moving on to the AI-driven data center, massive build. There's lots of money pouring in. I mean, nationally, there's $1 trillion essentially coming on the table for data centers everywhere. And Michigan has open land. We have relatively affordable electricity.
Water.
We have water, and we don't have earthquakes. We don't have floods. We have some conditions geographic that lend themselves to it. And we want jobs. We want different types of jobs that don't tie us to the automotive industry.
But
it's this sort of conversation about what kind of future and economic future do we want to build is how I'm thinking a lot about it, right? I mean, I think it was really interesting that when this first announcement about this data center that was possibly going to be built in Saline Township right outside of Ann Arbor, the largest economic investment in Michigan history.
And people are fighting it.
Well, but I just want to say, and it came out via press release on a Thursday afternoon. So I think it's
at least it wasn't Friday after 5.
Right. So I just want to put that out there as it's sort of this telling example of, yes, it's some jobs, and yes, it can build some things, but A, folks who live close by are like, heck no. But B,
why?
It's sort of
why heck no?
Oh.
Well, there are a variety of reasons. I think there are a lot of concerns about environmental impacts, water usage. The state law that they created last year for sales and use tax exemptions for these sorts of things, it does have some safeguards in there about environmental protections and everything, but I think there are still worries. And in terms of jobs as well, I know, as the battery plants were coming in, there were a lot of jobs promises in that. In this, data centers, yes, there's an initial infusion of jobs in their construction and everything, but they really don't employ that much. And if you look at the state law that is allowing the sales and use tax exemption, they really only have to create 30 full-time, long-term jobs that are 150% of the median wage for that area.
It's a fundamentally different vision of sort of a future of Michigan's economy than what we saw with the EV push. Because EV push kind of harkens back to sort of a golden age of Michigan economic development where you see lots of people going into a factory to work their shift. You can sort of evoke that imagery when you're pitching these things. As Beth is saying, these data centers are largely automated. They're only attended by a few technicians. And so the upsides for local communities is essentially tax capture and perhaps the revenue that it could bring in at the state level. But beyond that, you don't necessarily have that sort of, this is going to rise all boats. This is going to bring about a ton of...
Explain to people what tax capture is.
It means that they're going to pay a lot of taxes, hopefully to the local community, provided what the economic development opportunity is. Yeah.
But the local folks are saying NIMBY, okay, pick it up north.
Right. I mean, and a part of the problem is that when you look at where our infrastructure is at in terms of like electrical grid infrastructure, a lot of the sort of data centers have been erected during the crypto boom. If you look at Elon Musk's AI project down in Memphis, this thing's running on diesel generators. And so the propensity for noise pollution is enormous. There's a ton of noise coming out of these. We saw one in the Upper Peninsula as well that was a crypto mine, and this one also was producing an enormous amount of noise you could hear from almost half a mile away.
And the other thing, right, also too, is it just seems like the word affordability is sort of what is at the top of mind for everyone, because everything just keeps getting more expensive. One of the things too that we've kind of just only a little bit touched on is just the amount of energy and electricity, like, right, we talked about water and things, but that these take is, I mean, just sort of, right. I mean, it is mind-boggling amount of energy that it takes, which is a whole nother issue in our state when we are a aging infrastructure, you know, and what the energy companies say is, well, no, like more of this means we can create more of what we want the future to look like, but there's a lot of concerns.
Here's the major problem. The major utilities are trying to sell this to a public that doesn't like major utilities.
I mean,
okay, that's two strikes with the third curveball coming at your head.
They're as trustworthy as lawyers. I mean, they just don't. The public trust in DTE and consumers' energy is pretty low because of there's just years of various ice storms that knocked out someone's power for 10 to 14 days. They just, and especially in these rural areas, they're the ones that really get hit hardest. And so Saline Township is not that far outside of Ann Arbor, but it is far enough that they have a lot of scars in those kind of areas. Same thing, like there's a data center being talked about in Kalkaska and in Howell Township, just outside of where I live.
They just
in
voted
Howell
to put this on a 6-month hold.
Yeah.
Well, and we should give credit to Kelly Howes, your colleague at Bridge, who did some reporting that shows there's at least 10 communities throughout the state that are being eyed. Which just this week, actually, it sounds like maybe the community rose up enough, and that one is not going to happen.
And one of the things, why these townships, why these rural areas, and the number one reason is they are close to a certain type of high voltage power line that can transmit that kind of electricity. There are a lot of vacant sites where there used to be auto plants and steel plants in this state. They're not. Those plants were self-sustaining, burning on coal back in the 50s. They don't have power lines infrastructure that runs to them, even though they're perfectly good. There's one just a few miles west of here, a racer site where between Lansing Township and Delta Township, totally empty site. No one can get anyone to develop that site and put a data center there.
At the same point, I just want to also name, like, folks can absolutely be against it, and it makes so much sense. But the reason that we seem to need this is just this incredible, extremely huge exponential use, right, of cloud computing and AI. Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting. I was at an event earlier this year where some students were talking about just how sort of anti building this were, and I just said, right, but how many times are you using ChatGPT? Right? So, like, what's the plan then?
Yeah, well, there's the other part of the problem. The bulk of the electorate, the citizenry that is sitting out there, just did not understand one word you just said in that last sentence. Okay, they are not up to speed. I'm not degrading people, myself included. Okay, it's just not the people. It's changed that it's just kind of scary.
I think
that's part of the disconnect.
I think that's fair. We had Pete Buttigieg on our show a few weeks ago, and that's exactly what he said. That this is sort of the underreported, sort of discussed conversation that is going to sort of portend for our future state moving forward.
And I think
that we're just not talking about.
It brings a couple elements of uncertainty too. I mean, our financial markets are on a multi-year bull run. Like the stock indexes hinge on NVIDIA earnings reports, these AI chip makers, and so people are increasingly a little bit nervous about whether this is a bubble or not. And if these data centers are not yet deployed by the time we really see, whether this economic growth that the AI boom has brought about is here to stay, it could spell disaster for some of these projects. And at the same time, we also have environmental activists who are saying that there's cause for concern here. We have ambitious goals to have 100% carbon neutral energy by 2040. If you're bringing in multiple gigawatts of increased demand for capacity, while the Trump administration is forcing a coal plant to stay open, it's going to put a lot more strain on utilities.
But here's the bottom line. If it's not here, it's someplace else. Ohio, Indiana, Wyoming, pick a state.
That's always the argument, yes. And then to add to that, I mean, to Simon's point, people still haven't really seen how the renewable energy buildup will look, other than if you live in yet again a rural area where farm fields are just being plowed over and papered over with solar arrays, and so people are just not quite buying the argument, and there's no confidence that their electricity rates won't go up. And I mean,
that's the other part.
And here's the thing: the most powerful body right now in the state of Michigan may just be the 3 people at the Public Service Commission. I mean, they are more relevant than the legislature right now in their decision making.
They were late to the party on calling a public hearing. Did I notice that incorrectly?
It was under significant pressure, yeah. And I will say, I'm
How
still.
could they have missed that?
Well,
I don't think they missed it.
DTE was.
Oh, you mean it was on purpose?
DTE was trying to use its right to not have a hearing. They were trying to use the laws that DTE helps write, and just
That's why they helped write them,
get this thing greenlit and just go right straight to the finish line. And of course, Craig Munger asked the governor a direct question like, "Do you want to see a hearing on this?" And she said, "Yeah."
But we don't have to bring everybody in a room, right?
Yeah. Her office walked it back that night and said, "No, people can submit written comments. That's a perfectly good way of getting your voice heard."
The other thing, I think we're going to get a lot of emails for Chad comparing lawyers to DTE and consumers. I think they probably won't appreciate that, and that's probably says a lot about DTE and consumers' reputation right now. But I also think there's a lack of trust there, but there's also a lack of trust that this is. People were led to believe 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, that these battery plants were going to be the boom, and that the state needed to support these, and that rural communities were screwing up this advancement in technology, and now we're moving that aside and we're looking at AI data centers, and so whether it is the future or not, I think there's a huge amount of distrust and a lot of NIMBY that is always there with these types of things.
And there's a temptation, I think, too, to want to go all in on sort of an economic opportunity that seems like it is the future. But when you look globally, electric vehicle transition is happening. It may not be happening in the United States now, but it is happening in other countries. And there's like a real tangible economic good that's produced. I don't think the long-term business case for AI, there's not this deluge of businesses buying their services right now to the extent that people
there is something
are
about
promising.
the state of Michigan. We're a little bullheaded, aren't we, collectively? You know what bullheaded means?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
One more thing that I think is interesting in all of this is because it is sort of new, and as these discussions progress, there isn't necessarily a Republican or a Democratic side to it. Right?
Well, I would assume that the R's and D's and the governor would love to have these, would they not? Except for the people back home.
Right. That's what
I think the Republicans are coming out against them because they see opportunity. They see politically their areas are the ones that are getting saddled with these. And so I don't see a lot of them jump up and down for it.
I think what I mean more though is when we're talking about AI and things like this, these are issues that there haven't necessarily been staked yet, policy on about is it a Republican policy or a Democratic policy in the future. And I think that's where some of this is just it's just got some interesting cross currents about it, sort of community versus big business, but then you have Dana Nessel, and there's an interesting dichotomy as people try to figure out both what are the political ramifications of it, but also the economic ramifications.
This is not DOA, but it's on life support. Yes?
I wouldn't go that far quite yet. I mean, these
Why
projects.
not?
There's a lot of money involved, one, and I think government officials are doing their best to fast track some of these projects. There's a lot less infrastructure requirements for these data centers than for some of the EV projects that were planned in terms of their scope and the logistical implications.
And watch the money that's being given to these local communities too, right? Suddenly if you're going to be able to build a really nice this or a really nice that for your community, is that worth it?
Well, but you know what? If I'm against it, you know what I'm going to say? Oh, you're going to bribe me? Huh? I mean, that creates a whole other problem in itself.
Sure.
It's a term known as community benefits. And like in Detroit, we have fights every time someone wants to build something and they don't want to actually put some community benefits into it. I mean, we saw this with the arena, we saw this with the Chrysler or the Jeep plant that got expanded, and so they're just coming in right at the front door. Here's our community benefits. They're going to build you a new fire hall and some trucks and help you with this other infrastructure. Also because like we're going to have this this infrastructure of our own, this multi-billion-dollar investment, and we want good fire protection just in case the thing catches a flame.
All right, let's talk about protection of our school kids with a legislative package of $321 million to help the schools address mental health needs and safety needs. But, well, let's see what the but is. Here we go.
It took 5 years after the loss of lives at Oxford High School at the hands of a young mass shooter for Michigan lawmakers to create a new $321 million school grant program for educators to beef up security at their schools and also address the mental health needs of their students. Lansing School Board officials have signed up for this money, but 22 other schools and 11 immediate school districts are asking a federal court to erase some of the language in the legislation because, quote, the strings that are attached, end quote, are unacceptable. Here's why.
We know that happens, but they want they want school districts to give up attorney-client privilege when there is a situation related to, as they describe it, a mass shoot, or it's actually a mass casualty event. Attorney-client privilege is what protects individuals, teachers, superintendents, everybody, not from transparency, but from being able to talk to their attorney about if there's litigation.
He reports that his side never got a chance to change the language because
the first time that even legislators saw that was at the time they were about to vote.
The only other school district joining the lawsuit in this area is the Gratiot-Isabella district. As for the Lansing School Board decision to opt into the program, here may be the reason behind that.
Some people are in a financial situation, some districts, not some people, they are in a financial position right now that any additional funding they can find is something that they are going to take.
It could be a short-term gain for a potential long-term loss. Any school that wants the safety mental health grant must file a request by November 30th, which is why they're asking the courts to jump in with a decision to block that before that date.
So why would the legislature attach this language to this legislation that is badly needed in our school system, Mr. S?
Well, I mean, when you look at the fallout from the Oxford shooting and some of the other scandals that have rocked educational institutions throughout Michigan, not just that, including like if you look at the Nassar scandal in Michigan State University, these educational institutions are talking to attorneys. And the attorneys are going to tell you that you should not put yourself in a position where you're essentially conceding liability in these situations because they can prove financially disastrous in a moment where public schools already feel like they're sort of on shaky ground fiscally. And so, I mean, I can see why they wouldn't be opposed.
Yeah, I think it's their attorneys. I think it's also their insurance companies largely, and their attorneys for the insurance companies telling them, do not waive this privilege. Because then the insurance companies are the ones who have to pay out if there's a settlement that results from that. And yeah, I mean, but I think the legislature, obviously they're being sued over this language. There's a lot of concerns among schools, but I think the legislature is making an effort to address something that is a little bit shocking to most people who send their kids to a public school. If there's a shooting there and there are people with the understanding of what occurred and how it occurred and what led up to it, and they're claiming attorney-client privilege, I mean, I think for most people that is kind of a concern. How do you address what happened fully? How do you prevent it from happening again if the very people who can give that information are citing attorney-client privilege?
But yet, those people do have a fiduciary responsibility to the school district, do they not? I mean, the point that the school board's people mean, you know, we're liable here. We've got to protect what we think we need to protect, right?
Sure. But Tim, you're putting a fiduciary responsibility above the responsibility of the safety of students in that sense. So I think, I mean, obviously there's a balancing act, right? Because everybody has a right to attorney-client privilege. Mm-hmm. But I think it is a worthwhile question to explore.
And I think some of the issue or the controversy surrounding this is it's basically, here's this pool of money that you can possibly get if you agree to sign this waiver, right? And so I think that's where there's this added level of these schools having to decide, and some schools that would really like to be able to, get this grant money for services for mental health or school safety. Right, and in order to do that, and some schools have, we should know,
have in Detroit signed off.
Have signed
off. They said, "Give me, where's the paper? I'll sign it."
So that's where there's like these sort of two conversations happening, which is absolutely what Beth is talking about and this issue, but that's tied into this pool of money that, and as we know, a lot of schools are looking for as much, as many dollars as they can get.
I mean, this kind of ties back to my earlier comment about who do you trust more, the energy company or the lawyers. Maybe you don't trust the lawyers here because you don't really know what you're giving up when you do this. I mean, if you are the parent of a child who was murdered in a school or shot and badly injured, like one of those parents in Oxford, you want some semblance of justice.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily you want money. You want answers. What happened? Why did you like call this kid's parents in and tell them how disturbed they were about him, and then let the parents leave, and then the kid gets the gun out of that the parents bought him out of his backpack and shoots up the school. This is what happened with the Crumbly family and Oxford, and so this is what just really kind of like really aggravates people, both parents and school officials, that they're, and it also just keeps legislators a little up at night as well, because they also see the liability that it could be on the hands of the state in these cases.
I don't know where this is headed. I don't know if the court's going to step in. They got to get this thing done before November 30th. If they're going to declare it unconstitutional, put an injunction on it. The clock is ticking on that.
It's a pretty fast clock that they put on this piece of legislation that didn't really get a lot of public debate. Again, back to the process of appropriations in this legislature. Major things with big consequences are just not getting any air of vetting in the process.
Well, it does come, but it's after the fact.
Yes, we're vetting it right now here at the table.
Sort of supposed to be the other way around.
I'm trying to remember too off the top of my head. Is Judge Seema Patel, the one who also is overseeing this one?
Yes.
I think it is, and it's just, oh my goodness.
She's had a lot.
This judge who has Court of Claims judge who has not only overseeing the 9 bills case between the state house and the Democratic Senate, also next week overseeing a hearing on the new controversial wholesale tax for marijuana, and this. I mean, there's a lot in front of this judge right now.
All right, Elissa Slotkin asked for and got protection. How come?
She got capital protection around the clock after the President of the United States lashed out at her and a couple of other Democratic lawmakers who were past either members of the military service or the intelligence community, Elissa Slotkin being a former CIA officer. They posted a video essentially telling members of the military that they do not have to follow orders they believe are illegal. And this was, they didn't directly talk about it, but this was kind of hinting at the Trump administration's and the Department of Defense his ongoing bombing campaign of boats in the Caribbean that they suspect are smuggling drugs, but there is little like legal evidence or proof that they are all actually carrying drugs. And so they put this video out. The President of the United States turned around and went on his Truth Social platform and went on a tirade saying they should be arrested, tried, and for sedition and punishable by death was the president's quote. And so he talked. The President of the United States talked openly about the death penalty for Elissa Slotkin, a senator from Arizona, and a couple handful of Democratic reps.
Silence. This is unprecedented, is it not?
Yes. I mean, I think that's why it's silence, because it's just sort of like, Chad just laid it out. I mean, I think the thing that really hit me was at one point, like there was some that Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, right, then was asked, is the president saying, right, that they should be killed, basically. And it was like, the headline was like, no, president doesn't think members of Congress should be killed. Like just the fact that is where we're at right now in American politics, and just the stem of violence that we have seen. I mean, I think I was here the week of the Charlie Kirk assassination, right? And then all of the politicians come out and say, we need to bring down the temperature.
Yeah.
This is not bringing down the temperature.
All right, Garland Gilchrist, did any of you see the video that he did?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you all think?
Well, I will say we have an intern at Michigan Public who has been trying to get a bunch of us to do that video, and all of us were like, no. And so then she was the first. Oh, okay.
He did a lip sync to some songs which I did not recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're not meant to, Tim.
Thank you.
Not your. It's not for you, sweetie. It's not for you.
Thank you. I feel so young. Anyway, they did a lip sync with a congresswoman, and it got some attention, did it not? I mean, I did a TV story on it.
Well, what did you explain that if you didn't understand it? What did you do?
I sort of understood
No,
it.
look,
Look at he's desperate for publicity.
But it's also, this is what a lot of, I mean, Jocelyn Benson did a video recently too on her campaign. We know Governor Gretchen Whitmer was sort of one of the first statewide politicians in Michigan who's really leaned into the trend of sort of taking what are these viral videos and then doing them themselves.
What'd you think?
I mean, I think what you said. I think he wants attention. He's not doing well in the polls. His campaign is struggling, and I think maybe this gives him a little bit of a boost in a certain demographic. But it is, it was interesting.
Well,
I think also people have to be a little bit careful with those though, because people who don't understand those TikTok trends will kind of be turned off by it or like very confused by it. I also think sometimes they can go too far. I know Governor Whitmer has gotten in trouble for a few of hers. So I don't know. It's an interesting
When
plug.
he was on the show, he made a point that part of his target audience is particularly young voters, but particularly young men. So here you are on TikTok. I mean, that's the gateway to what he's looking for.
The careers of modern Democratic politicians in a competitive primary can rise and fall in a viral moment. Mallory McMorrow is a great example of someone who built a Democratic career after a viral moment.
It has to be authentic, though. I think that's the thing that I've noticed,
think it just has
too.
to be good.
Right, I mean, it's got to be good, but I think also for younger voters, like they can smell authenticity and when it's, cringe or not.
I was sort of hoping he'd do Tammy Terrell and Marvin Gaye, but nobody remembers them.
You can put in a request for that.
No, it's not my job. It's not my job. My job is to thank you guys.
The Jocelyn Benson video where she said,
Quickly.
you can trust me, and there's this guy falling and she lets the guy fall. That video is going to get manipulated into a television ad against her, that you can't trust Jocelyn Benson. She'll just let you fall to the ground. I mean, I can see this. It'll happen. So there's danger in doing these viral videos. You think you're reaching a young demographic, they're going to turn around and use it on you with the older voters.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are very good. So are you for watching. See you more here for Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan public television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.